One of the most important and iconic places in Resident Evil lore is the secret lab located just outside of Raccoon City. Today I thought it'd be fun to put it under a microscope and see exactly how much went into both its creation and its destruction. From smelting employees to giant plant monsters, here are 50 facts about the Nest. The lab itself is hidden within the Arklay Mountains, being built within the limestone deposits. In order to keep it as secret as possible, all of the entrances are also hidden and disguised. The chemical disposal plant that Jill visits in Resident Evil 3 is very close by to the Nest lab, serving as a disposal plant for all the waste and failed experiments from that laboratory. 8 miles away from the lab is the training facility from Resident Evil 0. Speaking of which, the Nest lab has appeared in Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil Outbreak, Resident Evil 0, Umbrella Chronicles, Darkside Chronicles, and Resident Evil 2 Remake. In the Resident Evil 2 Remake, when you enter the cafeteria, you hear an automated announcement.
Our menu is designed for your nutritional needs using our latest biological research. Please enjoy our tasty selection of healthy foods.
If you look at the menu options, you'll notice that while everything is definitely tasty, almost nothing on the menu is healthy whatsoever.
Yeah.
The reception area that was added in the Resident Evil 2 Remake was one of the best additions to the lab due to the simple fact that the lab, which was supposed to be top secret, had no barrier of entry to anyone who may end up there, as demonstrated by Leon and Claire, who were able to just walk into it in the original game.
That's cool.
There is an unused close-up angle of the desk in the security room showing what might have been something to interact with. If you take a close look at the screen for the elevator where you have to use the master key, you can see the text say 3 men, gorilla stance. This was most likely just random English words, especially since you couldn't read it at all due to the original resolution of the PS1. In the sleeping quarters, there is a dead scientist who is trying to kill the plant coming through the air vent. While it's never explained, this plant is coming through an offshoot of the gigantic plant in the passage to the B4 lab. This plant can be killed by using the lighter on the oil, Leon's flamethrower, or with a fire round from Claire's grenade launcher.
Huh. That's cool.
The BOW gas has always been a bit mysterious, but here's how it works. If you use it, the current scenario that you're playing will give the evolved liquors the same stats as regular liquors, making them much easier to kill, and will make the IVs a bit weaker. However, if you use the gas in Scenario A, Scenario B will result in evolved liquors that are even stronger than normal ones, and will cause all the IVs to become poisonous and a bit tougher to kill. So the best option is to use the gas only in the second scenario. Even though fans have always called them IVs, that was never their official name. They are canonically known as Plant 43 and were produced as a direct result of the research on Plant 42 from the Mansion incident. These were smaller, but now had the ability to walk and hunt down prey instead of waiting for it.
That's scary.
There's a sign over the pool of molten lava that became an accidental joke due to the fact that it reads, Iron Smelting Pool, employees only. The B4F culture room is unique in a few ways. First, it's the only room in the B scenario that requires steps in the A scenario to unlock. It also features a unique music track that isn't placed anywhere else in the game. Additionally, if you took the submachine gun from the police station locker, then you will find ammo for it here that cannot be found anywhere else in the entire game.
Wow.
Exclusive to the Nintendo 64 version of this game, there is the addition of a Dead Hunter R that was added to this room. In the final boss fight room for Scenario A, the word elevator on the floor is misspelled. The Scenario A boss fight room was also drastically different initially, looking much more like a warehouse and having a gap where the elevator would possibly arrive, most likely from below. On September 22nd, Umbrella sent their security team, led by Hunk, to commence Operation Nest Wrecker and steal the G-Virus. The reason this operation happened was because Umbrella began to get suspicious of William Birkin, who it turned out was in communications with some spies and was attempting to sell the G-Virus.
Oh.
After being shot and nearly dying, William injected himself with a dose of the G-Virus and transformed into a monster, going on a rampage and killing the entire team, aside from Hunk, who was the only survivor.
Wow. Oh god.
Dr. Frederick Downing, who you may remember from Resident Evil Degeneration, was one of the employees at this lab and actually smuggled a sample of the G-Virus out of the lab before the events of Resident Evil 2 occurred.
I just
Originally, the
recently
room
watched
with the
that movie.
lava pit was inhabited by moths, even having the larva blocking the power switch. Originally, the main shaft had white lighting for all 3 doors, but was later changed to illuminate the east as blue and the west as red, most likely to make it less confusing to navigate.
That's cool.
The username for the fingerprint registry is guessed in every version except the Nintendo 64 version, where it is Nemesis. Annette doesn't have a canon death in the remake, dying either during the collapse of the nest after shooting Ada, or at the bedside of the resting room with Claire and Sherry. In Resident Evil Outbreak File 1, the second level takes place in these labs, this time with most of it being frozen. Even though liquors were common in the original, there is only one liquor in the Outbreak scenario, and it only appears in the B5F emergency passage on very hard mode. In Outbreak, the player is able to make the V-Jolt by combining 2 chemicals located in Lab B6 and B7 floors. They can then use it on the giant plant blocking the ladder to make the plant do something you regularly see on a different video website. During the below freezing point, there is a rare random event where, when entering the main shaft, your character will get abducted by the giant moth and end up in the password room, cocooned to the wall if no one else is there. Otherwise, it will just drop you in the room and fly away. In the scenario, you have a countdown before the tram elevator leaves. If you aren't on it, you get a unique game over where a hunter kills your character.
Wow.
The tram's locomotive can be used against the boss of this scenario. By flipping this switch, the tram will push forward and hit hard. It works similar to the catapult in Code Veronica and requires a cooldown before it will activate again. Yoko, one of the 8 playable characters in Outbreak, actually worked as a scientist in the Nest Labs. If she is not present in your party, you will find her as a zombie. There's a lot of backstory between the scientists you find around the lab. Dr. Wayne Lee, who you find as a zombie in the nap room, was high school friends with Rick Mendoza, who you find pressed against the glass of the greenhouse.
Aw, that's sad.
Dr. Lee was murdered by the USS team that came to steal the virus, being shot and killed. He had tried to hide in the nap room bed, hoping the shutter would shield him from the bullets, which you can see the bullet holes all over the shutter and the wall too. The duct, which connects the west area to the upper floors, has an unbelievably long ladder in the original, which would have required scientists and employees to climb it. This was changed to give it multiple tiers in later games and make it a bit more realistic. Darkside Chronicles was the first time we got to see the labs recreated faithfully with very few changes, mainly being the lava pit, which was now under a circular platform. I was curious to see if self-destruct systems actually existed, and it seems to be just a plot device. Though there are certain types of self-destruct systems, mainly used for military ships and oil rigs, and even then they aren't exactly the same. There's no confirmation where the lab level takes place in Resident Evil Resistance, but it does seem to invoke the spirit of this lab and most likely takes place in or near Raccoon City, so it's possibly a different section of the Nest. Operation Raccoon City features its own take on the Nest Lab, with the concept art looking very similar to Darkside Chronicles' rendition of it. It also features Hunk and William. Ada surviving is one of the biggest mysteries and plot holes in the franchise. We never see the bottom of the pit she falls into, which was made canon in the Resident Evil 2 remake. However, in the original Resident Evil 2, the canon story is Claire A, Leon B, which means that Ada gets slammed into the console by Mr. X and dies. But if you remember, she later throws down the rocket launcher to Leon, revealing that she survived before the game is even over.
Here, use this.
Yeah.
Ada, is that you? Ada!
In the Resident Evil 2 remake, there's a minor spelling error in the document you get from Annette, where instead of due to, it's due to. In
That's funny.
Darkside Chronicles, there's an additional boss fight with William in the main shaft area of the lab, a room where enemies
Yay.
are never encountered outside of Outbreak. If you were confused by the symbols used in the code to unlock the lab doors, they are actually numbers, just inverted.
Oh!
An easy way to remember the solution to the fluid puzzle in the Resident Evil 2 remake is to just use the letters RGB in Scenario 1, and in Scenario 2, BGR, which is the same but backwards. Red, green, blue, etc.
Huh.
Originally, the train was going to have 3 compartments instead of 2, and there's an unused background showing a large hole on the roof of one of the cars. While the Plant 43 monsters were an experiment, the IVs found in the remake are much more grim, resulting from a lab accident where Plant 43 attacked scientists and injected its seedlings into their bodies, which would then grow and mutate and basically take over the victim's body, allowing them to move around. In the west area in the below freezing point scenario, you can find the SP item, Empty Ink Ribbon. The sole purpose of the nest was to develop the G-Virus and study its effects, led by William Birkin, while Annette was the head of vaccine development. William and Annette were ultimately both killed as a direct result of the G-Virus, with Sherry being the only survivor of their family.
That's
Got
sad.
to put an end to G.
I have not played the original Resident Evil games, so that's, I kind of didn't understand a lot of it, but some of it that I did understand, it was pretty cool. You kind of like when you're playing the Resident Evil 2 remake, or Resident Evil 2 original, it is kind of weird that they have an entire lab near Raccoon City. And also, it's also kind of sad that Annette and William both die. And if that's true about William kind of wanting to sell G to other people, then that is very bad. I mean, and he was saying like, G is my creation, and so why would he want to sell it? If it, if since it was his creation, why would he want to sell it? Why wouldn't, it's like they all just created this thing just to create chaos and kill people, because I mean, it got out of hand, and then every time anything like this ever goes on in video games or shows or anything, that they always say, I didn't mean for it to go this far. Like, then why did you make it? because Annette was running around this, like the whole entirety of the lab, trying to track down William, trying to stop the G-Virus from spreading, and, so she was running around this whole place trying to stop it. So it was just funny. But yeah, this is a very good video. I will have the link to the original down below for you guys.